Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to see the female reproductive system. You're going to see that it's a little bit easier in the sense that you're probably more familiar with the names of different parts. But this year we're going to see a difficult thing, which is the menstrual cycle. So you probably will need to watch these videos several times. Do not worry. It's just that it contains a lot of information. But you know that this information is also contained in your book, so you could probably have a look at the book as well. Well, first of all, the parts. We've got this woman here with the reproductive system there. We've got most of the organs in the female reproductive system are internal organs, but of course it has an external part. These are the three parts in the external part: labia majora, minora, and clitoris. Three parts. These two first parts, their only function is to protect. Remember that this is a cavity, and as every cavity, it has the possibility of getting an infection. So we've got to keep everything prepared in order to avoid those infections. And in this case, it's even more dangerous because we've got here a very important part of the female reproductive body, the one that could probably contain a baby. Remember that the reproductive system has a very important function, that is producing a baby. So and getting it is not so easy. So once you've got it, you really need to protect it. That's why we need to protect all these female system. So we're going to have these two labia protecting the outer part, but also the environment in a vagina is going to be going to try to avoid every pathogen, every fungus or bacteria from getting in there. And the pH, the acidity, is going to maintain most of them away from this area. We also have this organ here, the clitoris, which also has an important function, because you know that this erectile organ has the function of providing pleasure to the woman, which is something that is also related to this function of reproduction. Well, imagine that there was no benefit for the woman having those sexual intercourses. You're going to have serious consequences just having this baby for all your life. You've got to take care of it. So nature, in the same way that it gives you this sense of hungry that you need to cope with, because your body needs to ensure that you get enough nutrients. Well, in this case, this organ is also ensuring that you've got those sexual intercourses and you get this baby, because the mission of this reproductive system is trying to produce that baby. So that's an important organ as well. More parts that you probably know is this uterus, which has a very important function. Remember, is the place in which the baby is going to develop. And this uterus has this part there, the cervix or the neck of the uterus, that is a little bit more narrow, and it's going to have a substance, a mucous substance, that is going to be very important during the fertilization process, because in this part is where the female body is going to give food to the sperm cells, so they can survive in the female body for 5 days eating these substances. But we've got more parts there. We've got the ovaries. Ovaries are the gonads, the real gonads, those that are going to produce the gametes. And even though they are connected to the uterus, the ovule is not going to travel in this sense. The ovule will get into these fallopian tubules. Fallopian tubules are not physically attached to the ovary. There's an empty space there. and trying to cover all that empty space, we've got these tiny projections that are fimbria in the fallopian tubule. So we've got all those names. Uterus, you probably knew it, and also you also knew the ovary and the vagina, but you probably, and the fallopian tubules, but you probably ignored this one. This is probably a new one, fimbria, those projections, the cervix, the neck of the uterus, and the external organs. Well, that's probably the easiest part. And we've already mentioned more or less the function of each one. We're going to see, in the same way as we did with the sperm cells, we're going to see the parts of the gamete as well, and where are they produced. But let me show you one more thing here, which is these two layers of the uterus, because they are going to be very important. The uterus has an internal cavity in which the baby is going to grow, but it also has a very thick layer. This almost half of this wall, half of the volume of the uterus is this wall, the myometrium, which is a muscle. It's probably the strongest muscle that you girls have in your body. And then we've got this internal layer that is the endometrium. The size of this endometrium is not always the same. It depends on the phase of the menstrual cycle in which you are. This is going to fall down when you've got the period. This is the blood, where the blood that you are seeing is coming from. All this endometrium, all this layer falls down, and it's going to be the period. So all this layer could be either very thick just before the period, or gets thinner when all blood has gone down when you finish with your period. Okay, so that's for the uterus, and I told you we were going to see something in this ovary, everything that happens there, and all the parts, the components of this ovule. Well, first of all, the human egg, ovum, ovule, well, many different names. It's a singular cell, so we've got this is the cell membrane, that part there, that is inside the cytoplasm, and it has the nucleus. But remember that this nucleus only contains 23 chromosomes because it has suffered the meiosis process. Surrounding this cell membrane, we've got this part, the zona pellucida, that is a jelly coat, is protecting this membrane. And even surrounding that jelly coat, we've got another layer of cells. They are the corona radiata. This corona radiata is another layer, an spherical layer of cells that are coming from the follicle. We'll see what the follicle is. But it's very important that you understand that all that is protecting the cell membrane. So when the sperm cell wants to fertilize the egg, it's not going to suddenly reach the membrane and enter. It will try to fight against these cells, trying to get an empty space. So you've probably heard that the first sperm cell that reaches the ovule is the one that fertilizes it. But it's not always the first one reaching this part. Sometimes there are sperm cells that are fighting and fighting and fighting, and they cannot fertilize the egg, and suddenly another one enters there. So it's important for the protection of the ovule, this corona radiata. All those parts are very important. And you've got there that in a woman's body, just 450 ovules mature, so 450, but we've got 400,000 follicles. What are follicles? Well, let's see it. This is the diagram of an ovary. Okay, pay attention to that. You're going to see there different stages. this is the development of the ovule, the oocyte, inside the ovary. So in day number 1 in your cycle, what is day number 1? Is the day in which you get your period. You start with your period. Day number 1, because you've got the period, you are bleeding, your ovule is not in the fallopian tubule yet, is starting to be formed. That's day number 1. You've got a tiny oocyte that is growing up inside a follicle. This follicle is going to grow and grow and go on growing while the ovule is maturing. So say that this one is day number 1, this would be day number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 7, 8, probably day number 9 or 10, a very big follicle. We call this follicle the Graafian follicle. And then when it's very big, it suddenly explodes and it's going to release the ovule. This happens in day number 14, more or less, in the cycle. We call this process ovulation. But this ovule has been growing inside the follicle for 14 days before it goes out of the ovary. What happens with this ovule? It will go to the fallopian tubules, trying to be fertilized, hoping to be fertilized by a sperm cell. But what happens inside the ovary? We've got a scar, una cicatriz, a scar in the ovary. We call this scar corpus luteum. It's the yellow body. And this corpus luteum, this scar, is going to have an important function, sending out, releasing hormones. So if this was day number 14, this big scar is day number 15, and it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller until it disappears in day number 28. Once this one disappears, well, the same cycle is going to start, but it's not going to start here. It's going to start in the opposite ovary, because a woman releases one egg in each ovule every 28 days. So say this is the 1st of May. Say you've got the period the 1st of May. Then the 14th of May is going to be the ovulation, and this would be 15, 16, 2, and you will finish the 28th of May. So more or less every cycle lasts 28 days. And this is what happens in the ovary. This is what we call the oogenesis, the formation of the ovules. Okay? This is a very complex process because it's not only this growing, but it's also a lot of hormones that are having a function there. This follicle that we call primary follicle, mature or Graafian follicle, this one is going to send out one type of hormone that are the estrogens. Remember, ovaries are gonads, but they are also endocrine glands that produce hormones. This is releasing estrogens. And this scar, the corpus luteum, is also going to generate another hormone, progesterone. We'll see the function of each hormone later.